Buenos dias, estudiantes. I hope everybody's having a great weekend. As promised, this is the short lecture on stem changing verbs, or boot verbs as they are called, and we're going to learn why that they are called that in just a moment. So, there are three types of stem changing verbs. There are verbs that we change where we take the E in a verb and we change it to IE in the stem of this verb. There are verbs that we take the O and we change it to a UE. And then there are verbs that we have an E and we change it to an I. And the reason that they're called boot verbs is because we don't make these changes in every part of the verb chart, which I'll go over here in a moment. So these are the verbs that follow the E to IE stem changing pattern. So for those of you taking notes, I would jot down these verbs and how they follow these patterns. So we have cerrar, and I'm highlighting the E that we change. Comenzar, empezar, pensar, perder, venir, and tener. The reason venir and tener have stars next to them is because they are also yo-go verbs. And we'll get to that more in a second, but basically in the yo form, we just change it to go. So it becomes vengo and tengo. But we will go over that more probably after the holidays. So the reason that we call these stem changing verbs is because we literally make a change to the stem of the verb. And if you remember from when we talked about regular verbs, AR, ER, and IR, the stem of the verb is everything before the AR, ER, or IR. So in this case, our stem is perde, or the part that actually means lose, the part that actually means the action, not the part that means to. So we are basically going to make a change to the stem of this verb. Raiz is stem. Terminación is the ending, or the AR, ER, and IR. So the reason that they are called boot verbs is because we only make this spelling change where we take the E and change it to IE here. We only make the change here in the yo, tú, él, usted, and ellos, ellas, and ustedes form. We do not make this spelling change in the nosotros form. And that is why they're called boot verbs, because it kind of forms a boot on this chart. So we make these spelling changes in everywhere that's highlighted blue. We just treat it as a normal verb in the nosotros form. So if we take a look at perder, we are going to take that ER off, and then we are just going to deal with that E, and we are going to change it to an IE because this is the stem of the verb, and that's the change we're making. So now we have our new stem, pier, and as we always do after, we conjugate the verb or add the correct ending. As a reminder, these are our ER endings because perder is an ER verb. We have OSE, hemos, and en. So our final conjugation of perder is going to look like this. Pierdo, pierdes, pierde, perdemos. Notice that there is no IE here because it is not in the boot of the verb. And finally, pierden. So that's basically how these verbs work, and the other two verbs are going to follow the same pattern. We just need to make sure that we're only making these spelling changes in the boot of the verb. So now the O to UE verbs, these are the verbs that follow that pattern. We have dormir, devolver, encontrar, jugar, and I know that jugar does not have an O in the verb itself, but it still follows the same pattern. We basically take this U and we change it to UE. So jugar gets put in this group of verbs because it follows the same pattern. Mover, poder, recordar, volar, and volver. Again, we are making a change to the stem of the verb. This time we're just making a different change. We're going to change that O to a UE. So we are going to make this change once again in the boot of this verb chart. We are not going to make this spelling change in nosotros, but for every other subject, we will be in the boot of the verb. So, as always, we take off our ER because we don't want to say to move anymore. We want to say I move, or you move, or she moves. And we're going to change that O to a UE. So our new stem becomes mueve. And then we're going to add our ending like we do with every other ER verb. Again, those are our ER verb endings. So our final verb, our final conjugations, rather, of mover are going to look like this. Muevo, mueves, mueve, movemos, again, not making that spelling change there, and mueven. And all of those verbs are going to follow that same pattern, including jugar. Jugar is going to look like juego, juegas, juega, jugamos, no UE there, and juegan. Following that boot pattern once again. And then finally, we have our E to I verbs, which I think are new for most people this year. These are the verbs that follow that pattern. We have corregir, decir, pedir, repetir, and notice it is this E that we are making that spelling change to, not the first E, and servir. Again, decir is like tener and venir, venir, because it's a yogo verb, which we'll go over after the holidays. So if we have pedir, like I said, we are going to make a change to the stem of the verb. So we are going to change that E to an I here. Take off our IR because we don't want to say to ask for anymore. We want to say asks. And we change that E to an I. So now we have pid as our new stem. And once again, we add our endings. These are our IR endings. Remember that in the nosotros form, it is a little bit different, but it follows the ER patterns. And our final conjugations are going to be pido, pides, pide, pedimos, and piden. So that's how these verbs work. If you want to take a little moment and do these conjugations, we want yo and comenzar. So we should have comienzo. Ella and jugar is going to turn to juega. Nosotros and contamos, oh, I just gave you the answer, is going to be contamos. Ustedes and decir is going to be decent. I don't know if you guys heard that, but that was my puppy coming in and saying hello. And then the last one that I'd like you to do is usted and cerrar. That's going to be cierra. Thank you so much for listening. Let me know if you have any questions and we'll go over this on Monday. Have a great weekend.